Now let's look at Address Resolution Protocol, or ARP. Now, those of you out there who are very familiar with networking would probably argue with me and say, well, ARP is not an IP protocol. It does not fall in the IP family. And you'd actually be right. ARP is one of those weird protocols that works at two different layers. It kind of works between layer 3 and layer 2. The network layer and the data link layer. And what it does is it enables IP to send data on using IP addresses to hosts by resolving these IP addresses to media access control or hardware addresses. And that's what layer 2 needs to send the data on. Now, reverse ARP or RARP does the opposite. It resolves MAC addresses to IP addresses. So you have this ARP protocol that actually works between these two layers. So I included in discussions about the IP protocol just so you can understand how IP addresses can get resolved to MAC addresses. Now, ARP basically occurs with just about every single network transmission, or at least every single network session that goes out. Because what we have to do is we have to resolve an IP address to a MAC address in order for IP in the upper layers to work so that logical addressing can take place. So what we're going to look at really quick is a capture of an ARP request and response. So you can just kind of see how it works. It's a very simplistic protocol. It's a broadcast-based protocol. It basically is connectionless, has no error correction or anything like that involved. It's a very simple protocol. So let's take a quick look at it. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at ARP. And you may recognize this packet capture from one of our previous sessions where we were talking about ICMP. For now, we're going to look at ARP. And as I said, pretty much for most sessions, you're going to see an ARP request and response before this session starts. Even in this case of just a simple ICMP, echo, request and reply, you're going to see an ARP first. Because remember that IP uses IP addresses, logical addresses. But, as we know, the lower layer protocols use hardware addresses. Now, before IP can even send data to a host, there has to be some kind of resolution that goes on between the IP address and the hardware address. And that's where ARP comes in. So before this ICMP request even gets out of the computer, we have to do an ARP first to find out who to send that to, which hardware address to send that to that matches that IP address. So we see in our packet capture here, the first packet is an ARP broadcast. ARP is a broadcast-based protocol. It just sends out a shout to the network. Who has this IP address? 172.16.30.1. Tell me, and I am 30.10. So if you look down here at the breakout of the ARP, we see that ARP is right above the layer 2, and we have a ARP request. Hardware is Ethernet. Protocol type is IP. Size and protocol size is 6 and 4 respectively. And there's some other things in here that we're really not concerned with at this moment. But here's the important thing. We've got a sender MAC address. That's who's sending it. And we have the sender's IP address. And what we want to know is the MAC address. So that's all zeros. I don't know who that is. So that field is all zeros. But here's the IP address I'm after. So I'm broadcasting out. I need this particular IP address to whoever will get it and reply back to me with the MAC address. Okay? And so if we go and look at the request, or rather the response that comes back, we've got some of the same fields. We've got the ARP reply. Protocol type is IP. The sender's MAC address. That's the response again. The sender's IP address. The target MAC address, we already had that from the request, and the target IP address. So basically, it's a repeat of the packet that just went out, except in place of zeros, there's the target IP address. And when the sender receives this back, it knows that whoever it received this from basically is the MAC address that matches the IP address that it needed. So there's no overhead to it. It's just a simple, I need this address, here's the address back kind of thing. So that's all there is to ARP. And then once ARP takes place, any IP communications that need to happen, such as a ping or whatever, will occur at the IP address or logical addressing level.